And we trek to the secret location of a living fossil. Should we help it to survive in the wild or leave it to become just an ancient garden ornament? Next, Mark Horstman joins the select group of people lucky enough to see the world's rarest tree growing in the wild. The wollemi pine should have become extinct thousands of years ago, but there's one small secret last stand. As the wild trees battle to survive, there's an unusual plan to save the species by planting them in backyards around the world.
We're travelling to a secret gorge where few have gone before. I'm hitching a ride to a real-life Jurassic Park, the last stand of one of the world's rarest and strangest trees, the wollemi pine. I want to find out if we can help the endangered trees fight back, or if they're slipping into extinction. My guide is National Parks Manager Dave Crust. He's like the bouncer for the wollemi pines.
What if the Premier or the Prime Minister or the Queen wanted to see a wollemi pine in the wild?
Well, unless they're doing a PhD doctorate in research that'd have some potential impact on preserving the species, I'm afraid the answer is going to be no.
It's hood time, mate.
Oh, thanks, Dave.
As a security measure, I'm blindfolded to make sure the secret location remains just that. But even if I could figure out where we are, I'd want to keep the secret anyway. The wollemi pine once shared the world with dinosaurs, but I doubt it could survive being trampled by herds of tourists.
The site is legally closed to public access. Because the plant's so rare and so vulnerable, in many respects the population's just clinging on. So we've really got to take quite a precautionary approach to make sure that it's preserved.
It's a new genus called wollemi, midway between a kauri pine and a hoot pine, but its closest relatives are fossils.
It's been missing, presumed dead, for at least 65 million years.
Until one day, 11 years ago, a National Parks officer named David Noble abseiled into an unknown gorge and found himself standing in a strange forest. There was a time when conifers like the wollemi pine ruled the world. It's 200 million years ago, the Jurassic Age. Australia is part of the supercontinent Gondwana. The whole world is warm and wet, covered in lush rainforests. But as the continents break up and Australia moves north, it gets drier and hotter, and the conifer forests give way to flowering trees and grasses. But a remnant of that old Gondwana rainforest still survives here, hidden away in the vast and rugged Wollemi National Park northwest of Sydney, covering less than 1 hectare of one gorge among hundreds.
Okay, Mark, we're here now. You can take the hood off and be ready for a sight.
I don't have a clue where we are, but there's the wollemi pines. It takes my breath away. It's hard to believe that trees so large and so different could stay hidden so close to our biggest city. Because it's not easy to get to. You either stumble into it or jump out of a chopper. At the top of the gorge, I meet up with a team of scientists who visit twice a year to study these unique trees and check on their health.
All right, are we all good?
Yeah, thank you. Take the letter with you.
Abseiling.
It's only about 50 metres from here to the bottom of the gorge, but I feel like I'm going back in time, hundreds of millions of years. Pretty good spot for my first abseil, I reckon.
I've been here, I don't know, about 15 times or so, and I come back into this canyon and I think, well, this is like a lot of other canyons, and then I see the wollemi pine, I think, no, this is like going back into Gondwana and Jurassic times. It's utterly ridiculous because the pine looks totally out of place.
No one can say for sure why they only grow here and nowhere else. There's less than 100 pines in only 4 spots. So few that Dave Crust is reluctant to say exactly how many.
Since the original discovery, there has been discoveries of some additional smaller groves within the area. We've done a really extensive survey of basically the whole park and all the similar habitats in the park, and we think we've got them all.
Nearly all the trees have more than one trunk, a clever strategy to stay ahead of their competitors and survive fire and droughts. It's called coppicing, where they continually grow new trunks out of their roots.
So that gives them potential to survive as an individual for centuries. In fact, for millions of years, really, if you think about it. It's just crazy.
This is King Billy,
It is.
the biggest wollemi pine on the planet.
38 metres, one trunk, the tallest trunk. But
Right.
in fact, it's got a number of trunks, as you can see, so it, in fact, has grown upwards a lot more than 38 metres.
So to find out how many there are, you just count them, right? Well, it's not that simple. To answer that riddle, geneticist Rod Peakle analysed their DNA, and he couldn't believe what he found. All the plants have the same genes, as if they've been cloned in a lab.
This is really and truly an exceptional case. Only plant in the world that we've studied, anyone studied, where we've found no genetic diversity.
Thousands of generations of inbreeding have smoothed out the differences in their DNA, and then there's that radically different way they grow.
Like strawberries in your backyard, the wollemi pine might be able to reproduce by, producing a clump here and then running a root along here and producing another clump here.
Each time making a genetic copy of itself. In a way, the wollemi forest is one big woody organism, and that could be a fatal flaw.
Although there are 100 different clumps of trees in the gorge, in a genetic sense, that's equivalent to maybe just 1 or 2 individuals. And if those individuals are genetically susceptible to pathogens, then effectively the entire population is susceptible.
So far, their isolation has been their greatest protection. Apart from a tray of disinfectant, the pines have no defence against Phytophthora, a microscopic fungus that infects tree roots with mobile spores.
If somebody inadvertently introduces that to the site, the impacts could be, incredibly catastrophic. It could potentially kill, the whole population.
One for all and all for one. The small family of clones crowd onto ledges along a few hundred metres of creek bank. Imprisoned by their own biology and stranded by a shifting climate, we're seeing the end game of a long evolutionary career. But could seedlings breathe new life into the grove?
We've got this big grove of trees, and we're wondering whether they're just the living dead.
And what are you finding?
Well, we're finding that they are producing seedlings, and that's positive. Every year they drop seeds, and a few come up, and they seem to persist.
Especially in these light gaps here.
That's right. And what we've found is that they grow about a centimetre a year, if that, and produce one small branch a year. So that plant up the top you can see, that's probably about 50 years old.
Wow.
And sitting, waiting for a gap for 50 years.
And how many make it through, do you think?
We don't know. We've only seen one that has any evidence of making it through.
The several hundred seedlings in the gorge get their best chance when a tree falls over. John and Patricia discover the second tallest tree of 30 metres, number 17A with 21 other trunks, has been toppled by a windstorm.
The extraordinary thing is we've got these little shoots coming out of this stem, and this tree's actually completely snapped off. It's not joined to any root system, and yet the thing's still sprouting.
They don't want to give up, do they? You can see why they've managed to survive and the dinosaurs haven't.
It's hard to kill.
Yeah.
The wollemi pines have survived millions of years of global change. In fact, everything that nature can throw at it. But for these last few trees to survive, do they need a helping hand from us? Or would it be better that we just left them completely alone? Today, there's many more alive than when they were first discovered. What most of us don't know is that thousands are held captive in a secret factory run by the Queensland government. This is the DPI forestry nursery near Gympie. Surrounded by 8,000 volts of electric fence, it looks more like a detention centre than a plant nursery.
Well, it looks a bit like that, but there's less than 100 trees in the wild and the rest of the trees are here. So it's very important that we look after our investment here. Also, the site is a quarantine nursery site, which means that all the entrances are covered by these footbars, and that stops any diseases from coming into the nursery.
This is the only wollemi pine factory in the world. 7 years ago, they started out with cuttings taken from the wild. But like other plantation trees, Mal Baxter says the future of mass production is in tissue culture.
Well, just in this greenhouse alone, we have over 50,000.
And in the whole facility here, what's your estimation?
We hope by the time we go into full production that we'll be in the vicinity of 500,000 plants a year.
With so many potted pines ready to be set free and sold to raise funds for their wild cousins, some suggest it's time to take direct action and replant another gorge.
So why can't we use that to advantage, use that resource to create another wild population, a reintroduced wild population, which people can go and visit and in a sense experience the awe of seeing this ancient tree growing in the wild.
I would not support restocking just at the moment. I think we should monitor the population here to see how it's going. It seems to be ticking over.
The current logic behind national park policy is that we should only fix problems that humans have caused and not try to play God.
The question about, gardening in national parks is a difficult one. It may well be an option in the future to maybe create some openings in the canopy to try and encourage some seedling growth.
Meanwhile, we'll just have to settle for turning our gardens into national parks. Back at the nursery, Barbara McGeoch has just the thing.
These wollemi pines here are very special. We call these our collector's edition. And the reason for that is that these are the first trees grown on from the cuttings taken from the wild population. Now this one is a child of King Billy.
Ironically, if someday the wollemi pine does die out in the wild, it will live on as a garden ornament or an indoor plant. There's reason for hope, though, that a dinosaur in the hand is worth two in the bush.
We're looking at a plant that was supposedly extinct, that has been on the earth over an enormous physical change and is still here, and every time we look at it, it shows us something different.
What's left to find out?
Well, we haven't found any dinosaurs yet. We're still hoping for a little velociraptor to come out of the woodwork and surprise us.
Mark Horst